Fabulous fans, friends, and fellow functionaries, find fun following we few furtively flipping comic folios as we first feast on 5 follies forever found in funny books as the FF faces foes and we flash fearless forethought in our first 5 Fantastic Four. My name is Scott Reed, and I'm joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison
and Shad Schubert.
And enough with the F words, because someone might slip up and make this podcast explicit. So in this episode, we are going to be discussing our next segment of First 5 with Fantastic Four. Then we're going to dive into what we've been reading recently. I'm going to ruin Mike and Shad's day with some trivia. And then, of course, we're going to do a CLZ shake. But before we dive into that, let's jump on some hot takes on what's been going on. I'm going to go ahead and start with Aquaman. I think I'm the only one of the three of us that's seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Well, it's just as good as the first one.
All right.
So yeah, don't expect anything great. I still think Patrick Wilson should have been Aquaman over Jason Momoa.
Yeah.
And I knew it was going to be bad whenever Jason Momoa had a writing credit in some of the opening sequences. So that was just not didn't bode well for the film from the get-go, and it really didn't get any better.
From what I heard, he already knows this is probably the end of the run. He's already made it public that unless the impossible happens and it's a very popular film, big money maker, box office smash, this will be the last we see of this character in this, at least in this way.
Right.
Yeah, so I can't recommend it to anybody. So I get tired of those posts that say, "Well, just check your brain at the door as you go in," because I just don't want to do that. So
yeah,
all
I
right.
mean, I like the review is if you like the first one, then you probably will like the second one,
and
right?
you'll love the second one.
Yeah, there's nothing bad about that inherently. It's just like if you didn't enjoy it, then you probably won't. And if you loved it, then you'll love it again.
Yeah, in the first one, like all the jokes were at the expense of Aquaman, and
right.
It's pretty bad when like the bad guy is the more noble character. So Orm as Ocean Master, which is Patrick Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Now in this one, in case you didn't know, Patrick Wilson's in it again, and they even poke some fun at him as a character. So the Black Manta stuff was good though. So
okay.
If you're a huge Black Manta fan, then I thought the Black Manta scenes were pretty good.
And same guy's back, the Yahya Abdul Mateen III.
Yes. Yep.
I like him a lot. He was probably the little bit of him you got in Aquaman. The first one was one of the better parts.
He was about the only good thing in the first Aquaman movie, and it's pretty close to being the only good thing in the second Aquaman. And there's more in it. So
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Looking at Rotten Tomatoes, I can see that the critics and the fans, or the moviegoers, once again are on opposite ends of the spectrum, from 36 by the critics, 36% to like 70-something, 79% audience score. But my question is for you, Scott, since you've seen it, is this a good send-off for the old DCEU?
Oh, no.
Is it a good way to say good riddance and goodbye? I mean, I thought that, looking at it like that.
It's not a good way because it just wasn't a good movie. So yeah. And it does not, it doesn't really bode well for me for the idea of Jason Momoa playing Lobo. So I don't know, but maybe you're supposed
under different direction.
Yeah, we'll just see. I can't decide if Momoa's a decent actor or not. I'm not seeing him in anything that's just like he's blown me away in. So
yeah,
So yeah, I don't.
His best role, you have to admit, was one he barely spoke in, and that was Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, yeah.
Because he was pretty intimidating in that.
He just had to look, he didn't have to, really say anything. And when you're talking in a made up language, you really have to focus on what it is that you're saying, so you can't really be too stupid with the facial things. So it's
very true.
All right. Well, if you haven't heard, Marvel Cinematic has parted ways with Jonathan Majors as Kang. I don't know if they've officially announced that they're going to recast. I've seen some things that I thought were
Yeah.
rumors of recasts, and some of them that acted as if they were official announcements, but I don't recall anything. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think we're going to just drop Kang, or do you think we're going to continue with Kang just with a different actor? Any thoughts on that?
That's a rough one. Yeah, I read the only article I had read was the what are they gonna do and should they just drop Kang? It didn't seem like they had actually made any formal announcements. I agree. Um, I don't know because what really is coming down the line, I guess that would be influenced by the Kang storyline is really besides the big Avengers movies.
Mm-hmm.
What other things should they do? I mean, it's not like they haven't recast in major roles throughout the MCU,
Yeah.
so they could totally recast and maybe would be better off for it. Just to give somebody else another shot because it seemed like it was dwindling. Maybe they can get a different actor. Though I thought Jonathan Majors was doing a great job as Kang. He was definitely could play all the different kind of versions of that guy pretty well. It seems so. It is a shame that he turned out to be guilty of some charges, and we have to move on from that. But yeah, I think they're going to end up recasting. Would be my bet.
I'd
Fine.
agree with that. I think that the Kang role especially is perfect for a recast without too much, kerfuffle. He's not the only compelling actor out there, and I'm sure that they can make this work.
It kind of makes me wonder whatever Ezra Miller stuck around through all everything that he did, and they still released that movie. And it's just like I don't feel like what Jonathan Majors did was as serious as what Ezra Miller did.
Mm-mm.
I mean, and I'm trying to, obviously, there's some assault charges, but I didn't dive deep into what exactly happened, but I've heard things where it's like I've heard from he's a bad dude all the way down to, well, she was the one who instigated everything and he's basically defending himself. The
Right.
truth
Yeah.
is probably somewhere in the middle, but it's just it just seems I don't know what's going through these execs' minds whenever, and maybe this is more of a slight against Time Warner, Discovery Warner versus Marvel. Maybe Marvel's doing the right thing by parting ways and immediately, irregardless, and Disney Discovery Warner's making the mistake in sticking with a guy who's had, in my mind, more serious issues than what these initial reports show for Jonathan Majors. So
Yeah.
I guess the good thing with Kang, though, is since we're talking about variants, they can basically recast anybody they want, and it's just be a variant of Kang. So I don't know. That's
Yeah, I think it's interesting to note that these are misdemeanor offenses. So I'm like you. I don't know the root incident behind it, and anything that's domestic related is very blurry.
He said, she said.
Yes, it's very difficult, and I don't think anyone comes out a winner in these situations. And I wouldn't even know. I'm really kind of torn on the whole cancel situation if someone's convicted without. I mean, he's basically become an outcast in his own field. It'll be hard for him to get parts in the future probably. I don't know. I'm really torn on this. I'd say if they were serious enough, yeah, you part ways, but like you said, I don't think. Sorry, my phone just thought I said the Siri word. I don't think these were as serious as what Ezra Miller's charges were by far. But again, I don't know all the details. So
right, of course.
And so far with Majors, it's one incident versus multiple incidents. So
yeah.
Oh well, let's not dwell on that too much longer, unless you guys have something you really feel like saying. No.
Mm-mm.
Second season, What If? hit Disney Plus. I've only watched the first episode. It's a Nebula episode. It's okay. I think some of the first season episodes were better, but again, we've only seen one episode, so it's kind of hard to say. Did either of you watch the first episode? What if?
No, I haven't
No.
gotten to it just yet.
All right. Okay. Well, then we'll just move on to the next topic. So, Mike mentioned that there was a threads on Tom King's involvement in the future of the DC movie universe with James Gunn. So, Mike, you want to elaborate on that any?
Yeah, I just happened to see a post this morning that forwarded or put forth what's now been on probably several news sites, comic-related news sites, that a thread post that James Gunn put up basically he was asked by a fan that's asked if there was any truth to the rumors that Tom King is working with him on developing the Supergirl film, and if so, are there any other of King's books that he's famous for that they might be collaborating on in the DCU. Gunn replied that Tom is an integral part of the DCU, not just Woman of Tomorrow, which is the Supergirl book / movie. He's one of the first people I showed the Superman script, asking for notes. He's included in various ways in numerous other projects, including Woman of Tomorrow and yes, which I presume means yes, he will be collaborating with James Gunn in the future. To what degree? I mean, I think that we've heard before that King there's been stops and starts with King being involved, just like there was with Grant Morrison on developing a movie or a larger scale entertainment universe for the DC characters. But whether and which properties he'd be working on, I mean, he is a creator that has a pretty good grasp on DC characters from everything I've seen, without any he doesn't seem to be too hands are tied type situations with the characters. He doesn't mind playing a little bit with them outside of your typical continuity, doing things you wouldn't expect him to do. That's been good and bad for me. I didn't like exactly the way things went with Mr. Miracle, and then again, I really liked Adam Strange. I thought that was pretty realistic. And Woman of Tomorrow, you guys have heard me say, I absolutely loved that book. Some people, though, they don't like the Supergirl that's turning 21 and getting drunk and being that violent. But I'd say that it'll be interesting to see what he would do with some of these characters when it's presented to such a large audience as would be in the theaters.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's got it looks like he is getting a writer credit on the Lanterns TV show. Is also on his IMDb page, and he did co-write the screenplay for the New Gods movie that got canceled. So he's already been yeah, so he's already been involved in some writing on the screen, some screenwriting. So yeah, I think that he's probably, if nothing else, will be a great person to be in a writer's room for a TV show like Lanterns, to be one of many, to be the like, hey, I'm the comics guy, and I talk to me when it comes to whether this makes sense within everything else, kind of the same way that we had Jeff Johns in the writer's room for a lot of stuff, kind of protecting the continuity and the world of the comic side of things. I could totally see Tom King being that person, if he's not even if he's not bringing over more properties that he's actually written, if he's just someone that's part of a group, it would make sense.
Yep.
Okay.
He's a good writer. There's no doubt about it. I don't think we've collaborated or read together anything he's put out that we really, really didn't like. Maybe not agreed with the ending, but
yeah.
Right.
Well, we've talked about this before. For me, there's always this fatal flaw in what he writes that I just sometimes I can't get past. Generally, always the writing is good though. So it's just, can I read it and get past the flaw to to actually enjoy the story. So
Yeah.
And we'll see. And speaking of James Gunn, his brother Sean Gunn has been cast as Maxwell Lord for some of the upcoming DC movies. Apparently, DC movies. It's possible that Sean Gunn will actually be playing multiple characters in the future because apparently James Gunn likes to include his brother in lots of films. But then what I think is kind of funny is Zachary Levi, who was, Shazam / Captain Marvel, made a comment that, well, I guess when you're the director's brother, you can get into a movie, So that, of course, led to some little blowback against him for making that statement. But I'm personally not a big Sean Gunn fan. He's kind of a goofball character, always plays the same goofball character, or has a character that doesn't have any words. I think Maxwell Lord is, that we obviously saw Pedro Pascal, and he did a terrible job as Maxwell Lord. So I don't know that Sean Gunn can do any worse. But can he be better? I don't know.
I don't think Pedro Pascal deserves the fault in that. I think that was a poor movie, not really the acting. He's really a good actor, I think. I don't know about Sean Gunn. I mean, he does play kind of the same thing. He played Yondu's second in command. What was his name?
Kraglin.
Yeah. Kraglin. He played the Weasel in that Suicide Squad movie. Just kind of an odd looking guy, but he might be that transformative, or he might be able to transform himself into a Maxwell Lord character. I don't know. When you think of Maxwell Lord, though, you think of someone who's a little bit more debonair and maybe mustache smoking and just the corporate executive guy. That is not somebody I see, but maybe I just have too much of that. His Kraglin character in my head with Mohawk.
Well, he played, and I'm trying to remember what show it was, but he
Gilmore
played.
Girls.
No, it wasn't.
He wasn't a lot of Gilmore Girls.
Gilmore Girls, yeah, but he played he was almost like a higher up drug dealer, so he was kind of like the more corporate looking, though bad guy in this. I want to say for some reason it was like. Maybe in like Jack Ryan, but I'll have to go track that down here in just a second. And even when he was supposed to be dressed up and looking nice and that upper echelon type of personality, he did not have the look. So I don't think this is a good choice for Maxwell Lord. So it probably to me implies he's going to have a relatively small part. So
I thought that too. Maybe it's just he's just going to have the idea of the people they've been casting, the characters they've been casting so far, sort of imply to me that this is, at least for the Superman Legacy movie, this is a world where the superheroes, the Justice League, they've been around for quite some time, and we're going to get smatterings of all of these different characters to give us the impression that the world is full of superheroes at this point when this story is told. And maybe that would include, what makes me wonder and kind of a little giddy thinking about it is if Maxwell Lord is going to be playing a role, or he's going to be a character. I wonder where the JLI, if they would be coming next. If you'd see we know Guy Gardner has already been cast, so that kind of gets me geeked up a little bit.
And it was the Terminal List was the Amazon show that he was in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it was a smaller part. He's only in one episode, but. Yeah. Anything else to add, or any other hot takes you guys have before we dig into? Oh, I got one more actually. I'm kind of excited about this. There's going to be this is from Key Collector. They had a alert that there's going to be a live action Spider-Man noir on Amazon.
Oh.
So, and if you're
I heard that.
If you're unfamiliar with Spider-Man noir, it was the Nick Cage character from Into the Spider-Verse. So it's gonna be. I don't know. I think that's kind of a cool concept, the whole noir line that Marvel did. So I'm kind of interested to see what they do with that. So
cool.
Yeah. And one of the guys from the Punisher series, I assume it was the series, is going to be co-showrunner Stephen Lightfoot. So there you go.
I did see a preview last night when we went to see the movie that wasn't Aquaman for oh my gosh, I almost said It's Madam Web. Is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that character? Have you seen the trailer? I assume. No.
Yes, I saw the trailer. Mm-hmm.
Is it the same power set as what is in the comics?
No. So, in my opinion, and I haven't looked into this a whole lot. Of course, Madam Web first appearance was amazing. Spider-Man 212 was a much older woman. Okay, so who had some prophetic ability. She could kind of see the future. They have a little bit of that in the Madam Web trailer, but I think in my opinion, what they have done is they have taken the visions that Madam Web has and combines it with one of the Spider Women. So, and kind of mishmash those to give, to make it an action movie. You're not going to generally have an action movie with somebody who is perceived to be 80, 90 years old who sits in a chair all the time. So they've kind of combined those two, and they're calling it Madam Web, even though in actuality she's probably closer to like the second Spider Woman.
Okay.
Is my opinion on what they're doing there. So, but it unfortunately just looks like another Spider-Man new movie or Venom movie, just with a female lead instead of a male lead. So
yeah.
But who knows? Maybe it will be good. I will, of course, go see it. Maybe it'll be good.
And
but
I guess
anything that Sony's done that Marvel hasn't been really, really tightly involved with, I don't think has been very good. So
right. Which doesn't bode well for what's the
Kraven?
other? Yeah,
Kraven the Hunter.
Kraven, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming out. I mean, it was supposed to be out sooner, but I think they got delayed from.
They kind of rearranged
writer's strike.
everything, not just comic movies. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was
after the
supposed to be
writer's
watching.
strike was.
I don't know that has. I think they're holding off on things because they feel like that the movie business is going to turn around. So
Okay.
I think they're I think they're hoping to get out of the slump and wait for people to start going back to the theaters.
I see.
And I think they're kind of pushing things back until that happens. So I'm not seeing any fewer movies than I ever did. So I don't know about anybody else, but
I've always kind of ebbed and flowed, and just would go almost every week, and then it's been 6 months since I've been to the theater, kind of a thing. So it just kind of depends.
Anything that I consider a blockbuster, especially I go obviously see all the superhero movies.
Yeah.
But then the big ones like the Dunes and stuff like that, I'll make sure I see those in theater. And then anything that my wife will go and watch, I'll go watch that with her. So, so yeah. I've got 4 free movie tickets sitting on my rewards card for my local theater. So, it's like I can go whenever I want. I've seen enough to get 4 free tickets. So
it's not the movie that costs so much, it's the vending.
Yeah. Hey, that's the only thing that keeps them open, though. They're not making any money on the sale of tickets.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's
exactly.
If you want a local theater, you got to buy the drinks and buy the popcorn. So
yeah,
so I buy a drink and buy popcorn every time I go.
Yeah, we do too. The 3 of us went to see the movie last night, and it was over $50 for popcorn. We did get a small pizza because we were starving, and we went. It was like a 1:15 movie. We hadn't had lunch, so we got a pizza, 1 thing of popcorn, and 3 drinks, and bam, $50-something.
So it is what it is. I'm ready for my theater to get back to serving food. They used to, and they haven't post COVID gone back to serving food.
Oh,
yet,
I see.
So.
Yeah,
which is unfortunate. It's not that it's great food, but it's kind of cool to sit and watch a movie and eat a meal at the same time. So, all right, Fantastic Four first 5 with Fantastic Four.
All right.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we should have done the first 4 with the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
We kind of missed it, but we do have FFFF.
That's
so right. I guess
hence your intro, which I have to hats off to your fantabulous, frenetic. Intro
foray into,
I don't know how you could come up with that much alliteration in the few minutes I've seen you over
tough.
there furiously typing your intro.
Yeah, I'm sure it all didn't make sense, but there were a lot of F words.
Right. Just not the one.
Just not the one. So all right, so this is our 6th first 5? Batgirl, Spider-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. I feel like I'm missing one. Batgirl. No, this is the fifth one. So
this is fifth,
Batgirl,
yeah.
Wonder Woman, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Okay, yeah. So this is the fifth one. So our first five. So there's another F I could have used for my introduction. So yeah. So all right. So Mike, I think I know the answer to this question, but what was your first introduction to the Fantastic Four? And if you're wondering, I put the five questions in the chat, so if you want to review those, kind of start prepping for your comment.
Yeah. Well, my introduction, I was, at my peak comic reading and brain comic absorption age in the 70s. So I'm sure I was reading and even maybe watching some Fantastic Four on TV. They had the cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've told this story so many times, it's not worth repeating again. It's just that I never got exposed to a bunch of Marvel properties as a kid, and I knew about them. And I think I remember learning more about them when that first movie, the first Fantastic Four movie, came out. I know by that time I had already understood that they were the contemporaries of the Justice League, which made me interested in them. And even there's this maybe not necessarily apocryphal, but legendary story of, we had Goodman playing golf with, forget the name of the DC honcho.
I don't remember either.
They were playing golf, and Goodman had heard that Justice League had been doing well, and he decided he came back and told Stan Lee to create
a team book
like that, a team book, yeah. And there was some things about this I did not realize how. I mean, this is what started Marvel Comics that we know and love. It's
okay.
It's not the 40s Timely. It's not the 50s Atlas. This was the beginning, which makes it really cool to me. And I'm not going to get into much more because it's kind of getting into my notes that may affect other stuff. But I loved Kirby's art in this probably as much as I've loved anything I've seen of Kirby. Yeah. I absolutely loved it. So,
Chad, what's your first recollection of these characters?
So I was thinking about this one, and I feel like I knew the existence of the Fantastic Four, heard the team name, but I don't know if I really knew the team itself until the 2005 movie. Like, I don't know if I don't know if I really paid attention to who the Fantastic Four were or cared or really dove into it at all until then and knew who they were in there. So that's where I'm thinking. I'm thinking that's probably realistically it.
Yeah. I cannot remember where I first came in contact with Fantastic Four either. So I suspect that it was from reading other Marvel comics, and the Fantastic Four would just kind of pop in. And or, when you're younger, you used to read the ads, so you'd see that Saturday morning cartoon lineup, and then there was the Fantastic Four cartoon that was on for a while, and then there were some I don't know when it would have been that I would have ever picked up a first Fantastic Four comic, and it's probably, I'm going to guess, I got this book that had a foreword by Stan Lee where he picked a couple of stories related to some characters, and for some reason I feel like the Fantastic Four maybe showed up in like the Silver Surfer story, and it may have been my first inkling of the Fantastic Four. So but if it's not from a Saturday morning cartoon or from an advertisement, then I'm really not for sure where I found them for the first time. So
well, it was, let me interject, it was Goodman and either Jack Leibowitz or Erwin Donifield. I had to look up those executives' names. They were not even the editor. They were more like the publishers. They were kind of above all of the creation stuff, but they knew where the money was, and that's where Goodman was going. Probably why he invited him to play golf, so he could get some ideas from him.
Get some ideas, yeah. I think that was a story about Goodman, right? Was that if there was something that was supposed to be hot, he would just throw out as many of them as he could until they just oversaturated the market and they move on to the next thing, So,
Yeah.
Westerns, let's put out 12 Western comics.
Yeah.
Romance, let's put out 20 romance comics.
Yeah.
So, what are your initial thoughts on these versions of the characters? Is anybody we want to talk about them one at a time? We want to talk about them as a group? What do you guys think? So,
I mean, I'll start with a couple of the characters. I mean, okay, so in Fantastic Four #1, I got me thinking about Mr. Fantastic and the whole naming conventions, and there's that old joke about he really thought a lot of himself by giving him the code name Mr. Fantastic. Has nothing to do with his stretchy powers or his genius ability, but I guess it does have something to do with his genius ability if he's that fantastically smart. But he might have been more aptly named Mr. Ego because he had such he's like oblivious
high
to his
regard
own-
for himself.
Yeah, but it was so cool because I don't think he looked at himself that way, but I think the characters that their interaction with one another and their bickering and the family fighting, and I'll be honest, after about 4 issues of this, I was like, okay, I'm done with this same little story beat of Ben being mad and arguing with Johnny and blaming Mr. Fantastic Reed for the accident, which it was his arrogance that caused the accident. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I was interested. This was the zeitgeist at the time, was sending a manned spaceship out into outer space. That was huge. I looked it up, and the actual real first cosmonaut, because it was Russia, that went into space was April 12th of 1961, which was about, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months before this book was published. So that had just been happening. So I'm sure that got the reader's attention. I could take up a lot of time talking about that, so I'm going to pass the baton to one of you guys.
Chad, what you got?
Well, I felt as though the characters were there from the beginning. It seems as though the personalities were there, the kind of who Johnny Blaze is, who Ben Grimm is, and they're kind of, they feel similar to their bickering and kind of who they are. I've always thought from anything that I've gotten into with them that Reed and Sue are super boring characters, and they are from day one. They are 2-dimensional in all aspects, and they are 2-dimensional from the beginning. Their power core seems to be the same. They don't really seem to different. Maybe over the years they've gotten more things that they can do with those powers, but the core power set is there. The costumes are there. It really from the first 5 issues, you really kind of establish it, and it doesn't seem to veer too much, except for the team. Over the years, swapping in and out some people here and there, but other than that, it really seems to be kind of solidified.
So I've always taken that they got their power set because, because Mr. Fantastic or Reed Richards could basically accomplish whatever he wanted. He was so flexible with that. So that's where he got his powers. Sue Storm was invisible to everybody around her, so thus she became the Invisible Woman. Johnny Storm was a hothead, thus he became the Human Torch. And Ben Thing was viewed as a brute, thus he became the Thing, right?
Yeah,
so now, as far as the original versions, Sue Storm is probably the one who has changed the most, in my opinion. Because she went from being a behind-the-scenes character, really just kind of in the background and just the typical 60s woman, right? To many consider her to be the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four.
Oh, okay.
And
that's more of a recent development, though, isn't it?
I mean, it's been 10 plus years.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I guess fairly recent. But,
modern, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically all she used to be able to do was turn invisible. Now she can actually build invisible force fields, which is kind of like ultimately ramped up her power levels. So she can, arguably defeat any other member of the Fantastic Four and a lot of the, the rest of the Marvel universe with her power set. So She's actually, again, probably the most powerful member of the FF. And she's the one that's probably changed the most. Thing probably having changed the second most, because he's no longer that guy who just is pouting all the time about not looking like a human being anymore and mad at, you can say anything to him, it makes him mad. That's not his character anymore. He's still the ever-loving blue-eyed thing, but that comes, I think, a little bit later on. So
yeah, it becomes much more lovable over
yeah.
time. Yeah,
Reed Richards, he went from, they've gone to extremes with Reed Richards. You think he's kind of ambivalent to people that are around him now, especially in like the Hickman run. They made him completely oblivious to even the people around him, where he would go lock himself in his lab for months at a time, and pay zero attention to Sue, who he later obviously married, right? She became Sue Richards. I mean, I vaguely remember there was even, lines about her making him schedule time with her, period. I mean, it's just like, you have to leave the thing. And like, even one of the things that he did, this is almost kind of a Dr. Manhattan-ish, is where he basically made a device whenever Ben and Alicia Richards much later got married. He made a device that it would basically stop time, so it would prevent him from having to deal with anything else while the wedding was taking place. So they've all kind of had their changes. Obviously their power levels have all gone up significantly, from what we see here in these first few issues. But that's kind of the nature of the 60s writing and storytelling. So
yeah.
So how close, I think I've kind of already covered this part, but you can elaborate this on any more that you want. How close does this version of the character match what we see in comics today? What do you feel like the same? What's different? I don't know if there's how much you guys want to add to that, since you're not probably big Fantastic Four readers.
I think Johnny Storm. I almost said Johnny Blaze again, or also. It seems to me, what I've read of him, his character's still pretty much the same. And I think Reed Richards seems to be, I mean, he's aloof to different degrees, but he's just more, these guys were so two-dimensional. Well, the first, like you said, Sue and Reed were so two-dimensional. They could have been DC characters at the time, because that was kind of the thing back then, is that there was very formulaic and very, lacking personality. But no, I think that, I think if they were not close to being very much the same, they wouldn't have kept these characters around for all of these years. They are very steadfast, very, they're just very, I mean, everybody, right after characters like Superman and Captain America, Spider-Man, etc., Fantastic Four, most people know who they are.
I'm kind of surprised that this is a book that has mostly stayed in publication. There was that time period where Marvel didn't have rights to do the Fantastic Four movie, so they actually stopped publication of FF for a while, just to kind of, I don't know, stick it to Fox. Was it Fox that had?
It's Fox, yeah.
Yeah, whoever had it, so they actually stopped publishing Fantastic Four, trying to get them to give up the rights, so that they could get them back, and then they ultimately finally did. But it's always surprised me that this book has stayed in print. I mean, it's almost like there's like that Wonder Woman thing, where if they don't print it, then the ownership reverts back, which is not the case for this book, because they've obviously done that. But it's just like, it's just, sometimes it's just so bad. There had been some great runs of Fantastic Four, but I've always learned about those runs later and then went backwards and read them. I'm not ever like excited about the next issue of Fantastic Four to hit the newsstand, so it's really tough to get into these characters, because again, they haven't really changed dramatically from 1961. So
Yeah.
Have you been reading the new series?
I have not. So the times that I specifically remember reading Fantastic Four, Walt Simonson had a run in the 80s where they kind of went out in space and did some exploration. That was a really, really good run. Of course, Walt Simonson drew it and wrote it, so he kind of had some, he's one of the better creators, over history as far as taking a character and molding them for a while, like he did with Thor. There was the Jonathan Hickman run, which I actually really, really liked. It was several volumes of that. The Dan Slott run of fairly recent history, where it led into Ben and Alicia getting married. That was a pretty good run. But for the most part, there aren't a whole lot of really, really good Fantastic Four stories, in my opinion, anyway. So.
Yeah, what was it? Was it Wade and Mike Wieringo?
Mm-hmm.
Had we covered one of those stories, I believe.
Yeah, there was the one where they go and meet their creator.
Go to heaven. Yeah, it's Jack Kirby or somebody who looks like
somebody
Jack
like
Kirby,
Jack Kirby. Yeah, and those stories that are kind of more that play on the comic industry more than they play on the comic characters. I'm not a big fan of those stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like why Doomsday Clock fell apart for me. Whenever I read that, the last 3 issues became a commentary on comics industry and not so much about what the story was being told. So
yeah. Well, one thing about the Thing that changed after the first few issues, I think he started having a little bit more of a defined look, because the first couple issues he looked real blobbish. It was very weird looking, and it didn't take long to start making him look more like what we're familiar with. So I guess that is a change as well.
Mm-hmm.
I always love that when we're doing these first fives, that there's so many first appearances of things and people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll get into that. I don't know.
I've got a list, so we can go into that. Well, we could talk about that in the next question, actually, which is, are there moments in the first 5 issues? So we're on question 4 that you would like to call some attention to. So, and as you mentioned, there's a lot of Marvel Universe building going on in these. The first thing I'm going to say is issue 1. They're not in New York City, right? They're in
Central City.
Yes.
Yeah. I
think it's issue 4 that they first talking about their headquarters being in New York.
Yeah, I think they must have got a strongly worded letter from the DC editorial offices that, hey, that's the home of the Flash, buddy. You can't be using that for the Fantastic Four. Although it would be cool to have a crossover that early with them.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. But so like in issue 1, you get the Mole Man, which is not a huge, Marvel villain, but he's still around. Issue 2, you get the Skrulls. Issue 3, nobody really pops up, but then issue 4, you get the return of the Submariner from the Golden Age into the modern Marvel universe. And issue 5, you of course get Doctor Doom. So,
and you get the first appearance of things like in 4, the first use of Flame On for Johnny to turn his powers on.
Yeah.
Their costumes were in 3, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they weren't even in costume for the first two issues.
Right, yeah.
So yeah.
In issue 3, the Miracle Man, that is the wizard, that's not any tie to other Miracle Mans, right? That's just
In fact, I think it's almost, I don't know if they intentionally did it, but he was actually the Miracle Man. There seemed to be an offense or an emphasis placed on that article.
Yeah.
And he looked like some Harry Houdini knockoff or wizard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you could absolutely see somebody coming around now with Marvel owning the current Miracle Man and doing a Starman type story where they incorporate the current Miracle Man with the Miracle Man and any other ones that have occurred.
That'd be cool.
trying to bring some continuity to those characters.
Absolutely.
I really got a kick out of the Skrulls getting turned into cows at the end of 2.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was that done in the movie as well, or in seemed like I remembered a reference to that somewhere.
There may have been, and I knew that something happened later on with those Skrulls, but I couldn't remember what it was. So I actually did go and look this up, and this is from Comic Book Resources, so CBR.com. and it's like whatever happened to the cows. Well, they actually showed up a lot earlier than I thought. Again, back in Avengers '97, during the Kree Skrull War, they
Mhm.
get turned back into
They
Skrulls.
hadn't been butchered yet, made into cheeseburgers.
and then there was also, gosh, there, like some stories where they think they got butchered, and some people who ate them gained superpowers. But I guess kind of like the big thing is that there was a series, which I've not read this series, called the Skrull Kill Crew, which is a Grant Morrison thing, which makes sense now that he would go deep dive into some Marvel history, and that's where they actually talk about one of them being, added into cow meat and thus giving people powers. So it's just that event has had little trickles, through
That's
Marvel
funny.
history. So yeah, there's been lots of little things. So for some reason, I thought there was something in Secret Invasion, but I guess not, at least according to this. So
Gotcha.
Here's a bit of trivia. I know we have trivia later on, but I just
Yes.
thought of this. Who came first? Mr. Fantastic, Plastic Man, or Elongated Man?
Well, I'm gonna go with Elongated Man just because you're such a fan of the character.
Actually, Plastic Man was around in the 40s in Police Comics,
Okay,
so he
okay.
was first.
Okay.
But you're right. What made me think of this is that Elongated Man showed up in Flash 112, which was in February of 1960, almost 2 years before Mr. Fantastic.
It's
But
fantastic. Okay.
clearly, Reed Richards won the long game on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually thought it was Plastic Man, but then I thought, he's asking this as a trick question because everybody's going to think it's Plastic Man.
Ah,
So, one thing that I totally had forgotten was that in these first few issues, Ben Grimm is transforming in and out of the Thing. I thought he was the Thing
he's just
for
there.
a long time before
Mhm.
that ever happened, where he would kind of transform in and out of his Thing. Now, he never stayed Ben Grimm very long in these.
Right.
It was usually just for a few moments. But that was kind of a surprise to me, having read this. And I don't know if I got anything else that I really want to.
It makes me really want to read. I know this is sacrilegious, but never read This Man, This Monster.
Oh, that's issue 50 of FF.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's, and they say that run right there in Fantastic Four is like the peak. So like if you want to start reading, because there you get in the 3 issues prior to that, that's where you get the Silver Surfer and Galactus story.
Mhm.
So 47, 48, 49, right? Then 50, This Man, This Monster, and then you get the introduction of the Black Panther in 51 or 52, and then you also have the Inhumans coming into the Marvel Universe all in that time frame as well.
Oh wow.
So that actually, I mean, obviously it's still written, for the 60s. But they basically say that is the peak of Stan Lee, Jack Kirby's collaboration on those characters. So, and I've read most of those, but it's been a while since I've read some of them. So, any other moments in these first 5 issues you want to call out?
I'm assuming the Fantastic Cars don't stay around much past the 60s.
Oh no, they do. It does.
Do they really?
Mm-hmm. They
In
pop
fact-
in and out. Yeah.
In fact, I'm reading Old Man Logan right now, and there is, of course, that's 20 years old now.
Yeah.
But by the way, it's awesome so far. They, I don't want to get into the plot, but basically, the Fantastic Car is being used by the Hulklings, the
Yeah.
grandchildren of the Hulk, and they're like the overlords of a part of the the country or whatever, and so they're flying around in basically a stolen the Fantastic Car, and
So they're
it's pretty cool. They got it
going,
graffitied
okay.
up and stuff, and
Mhm.
it was a good callback to it.
The
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the other thing was the over. There's a lot of asbestos use.
Oh yeah,
and I mean,
suits.
obviously, we didn't know the harm of it or anything. It was just
So asbestos wire is everything. Well, you got to have some reason for a torch not be able to burn it. You
right,
know.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, it's crazy. Like some of the things that are incorporated. There was still like the atomic power is still kind of a big
Right.
play in some of these.
Oh my gosh, that
as
was
well.
all
Yeah.
over these books. Yeah,
Mhm.
atomic power was just everywhere.
Mhm.
And what I did like is that, the torch's powers were not. They weren't just nothing. He was very powerful. That heat that he would put off was nuclear level, basically. It was really. I like how they played up his power set very early on.
Mhm.
And made him the one to beat if you needed to kind of diffuse a situation.
Yeah, and him going Nova, I think was even talked about in one of these.
Mhm.
'Cause that they've taken that to multiple levels of power escalation, but he kind of can. I think that's how he supposedly at one point killed himself during the Hickman run. Was he Nova'd an army of Annihilus attacking horde?
Wow.
So, yeah.
I had one other. My last comment was basically that last issue. By the way, I loved the Thing as a pirate. I thought, isn't that perfect? He fits in perfectly with the pirates, and he turns out to be the inspiration for Blackbeard himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. But the point I was wanting to make was that Doom had a pet tiger. I don't know if that stuck around or not, but I got to thinking if he was an inspiration for Ozymandias and Bubastis, his sort of like exotic alien tiger.
I do not know the answer to that question, so I have
Felt
no idea.
Really reminiscent of that. It made me want, for Alan Moore to maybe have read this and go, oh yeah, I want this world dominating megalomaniac to have a pet tiger. Yeah.
I do think it's kind of a silly introduction to Doctor Doom, where you have him sending them back in time to pirate times, but it's.
Oh, loved it. I love that. That might have been my favorite issue for that
Of course,
reason.
we probably should have read 6, because in 6 we get the first supervillain team up, which is Submariner and Doctor Doom. They team up.
Yeah.
Okay.
6. I kind of flipped through it, and they also have like Kirby always liked drawing like schematics. So he had a diagram of the Baxter building where you can kind of see inside where all the things were, and there's a term for that, and I can't even think. It's my English language is leaving me at the moment. So
was the Baxter building wasn't called that at that point, was it? I don't remember seeing that being named. It was just their headquarters.
Just headquarters.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know if that's what it becomes known as, and it's like
I mean that's as iconic as
later on, and things like that. So I don't know if they. Here, I'll look that up while you guys are.
I mean, you think of the other head. I got to think about headquarters too. Everything from the X-Men's mansion or the Avengers mansion to the Justice League satellite. Or I always like the idea of where super teams have their headquarters and why they have them where they have them. And like you said, the word he's trying to look up, the big 3-dimensional diagram.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd sit for hours and just pour over, where Aquaman's pool was that had a tunnel to the ocean,
It is the Baxter building in issue 6.
Okay, so
it is the Baxter.
Yet. All right.
I don't know if it's, of course, I'm trying to remember exactly. I think it was issue 3 where it was actually in New York, but I don't know if they call it the Baxter building then. But in issue 6, we do at least get the name Baxter building.
Okay.
Nice.
So I guess the next question is, go ahead. Sorry.
The only other things that stood out to me is that the issue 4, like the weird like Hulk things around the borders that never come to anything. What's that about? The Hulk is coming. Do you know the Hulk? And
the Incredible Hulk. Yeah. That's the Incredible Hulk. Is going to see issue 1 shortly after this.
So that was an advertisement for a totally different book.
Yes, for the actual Incredible Hulk. And issue 5, he's even reading.
He is reading the Hulk. Yes,
Incredible Hulk #1. Yeah.
Oh, that was the other like fourth world, or that was an interesting point I forgot to make. Was that in one of the issues? I think it was 2. They had a reference to Strange Tales and Journey into Mystery. I think there were comics in Johnny's hands, and that was always something that was rarely done in DC, because if it was, they made an allusion to it being on a different Earth where. Right. the characters were real. Whereas in Marvel, they're reading tales about what's happening
themselves
in their universe. Yeah.
It's basically like they license themselves for
Mhm.
comics, so
Yeah.
they are telling stories in the comics that may or may not be accurate to what actually is going on.
Yeah.
Of course, now that most people feel like, and this is for you, Mike, that the Fantastic Four's origins are actually just Kirby redoing Challengers of the Unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Because they basically kind of become explorers,
Yeah.
and through a lot of their runs. So,
and their adventures, and they're foursome, and and both were created by Kirby.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he even ripped it off from someone else. He took it from his own back catalog.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of that, I know this is getting into something that's going on now, but if you haven't seen the new series called The Outsiders by DC, it's sort of like that, where the characters, it's got Batwoman, Kate Kane Batwoman, the Batwing character, his name's eluding me. It was Lucius Fox's son, Luke.
Fox, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, then they got a third one that I'm not real familiar with, but anyway, they're kind of like explorers, but it's more like in the planetary way that they're, it's anyway, just a little bit of a diversion there, but
I don't see
what you just said.
Batwoman being an interstellar traveler.
It's more not interstellar as much as it is like interdimensional and mysteries that aren't. It's got definitely. I never read any planetary, but I've heard about what that was all about, and anyway, it kind of reminded me what you said about these guys being explorers.
All right. So the final question is do you plan to seek out more stories with the Fantastic Four in the future?
I always plan, but I do. I just to say that I really, for an early '60s comic book, I enjoyed the heck out of this. I've read a lot of '60s books that were like, oh my gosh, knock me out, so I don't have to keep my eyes open. I can't do it anymore. But this was good.
I agree. I thought it read very well. But no, I probably won't. I don't see myself sticking with this or picking up even a different era of it. Not my jam.
Yeah, for me, it's always going to have to be a really good story. I had to hear, and so this usually means it's going to be months after the story actually comes out. It's going to come on and say, hey, this was a really, really good run of Fantastic Four that I would be glad to go back and revisit with like the Simonson run or the Hickman run or the Slott run, go and pick up some issues and read that complete story later on. But it's not, I don't see me ever picking this thing off the shelf, month to month.
I don't think there's enough time in the world to actually read comics or any books for that matter without a little bit of foresight or foreknowledge of them being reputable. It's just life's too short to spend on reading bad material. As much as I used to be a completist, I'm like, I'm going to read every issue of Justice League, and nothing's going to stop me. And then I'm thinking about how much time I wasted on really, really, really bad stories.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, things that we've been reading, that's our next segment, right? Is what have we been reading? And to play along with that, like I usually have so Captain America, I'm going to read Captain America every month, no matter how good or how bad it is. That's my character. I assume, Mike, that you're always going to read Justice League, no matter how good or how bad Justice League is.
If it's ever published again,
Chad, I don't know what you're always going to read character is.
I don't have one.
Yeah. So,
Sandman
yeah, that's true. The Sandman universe
Sandman,
would be my that's a good point.
Be the closest thing that you would have to that. So it doesn't matter how good or how bad it's going to be. I'm not going to abandon Captain America. If I'm not reading Captain America, then I'm not reading comics anymore. So I'm going to let you guys go first because I just realized I didn't bring my charger down for my laptop and my battery's running low. So I'll be right back. Yeah, so I'll be right back.
Hey, we may have to break anyway. When my wife's coming home early to take her mom to the doctor, and she's going to want to talk to me. So if I do timeout signal.
Okay. All right. And I may or may not cut this out later on, but you guys pick your first story and I'll be right back.
I guess we'll just go ahead and start talking about it, or are we just going to
start talking? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, you go first if you like.
Okay. All right. Well, I read there was that mini series, that Star Wars Yoda mini series that was like a 10 issue. I didn't know at the time I was buying it that it was not an ongoing. But as I started reading, I was hoping that it wasn't going to be an ongoing, because it wasn't. It was fun. It was a fun little like a bunch of tales kind of scattered over Yoda's timeline. But no real breakthrough information. I think that was kind of what I was looking for. Is that's a character that is so mysterious in like his origins and the Yoda, the whatever people Yoda is of, that I thought, well, this will be cool. This will be a great opportunity for them to expand on the character. But it really just became some tales of things. And so I got it all caught up, and I was buying them issue by issue, and then quickly afterwards was like, okay, once I finish this, this is not staying in my collection. So my first one up to bat is not a it was
How
an
many
okay
issues
one.
was it?
I was 10 issues.
10. Yeah.
Yeah, 10 issues of the Yoda mini series. That it was okay, and I'm glad I read it, but I'm also glad to not keep it in my collection.
Are we just gonna rotate? You want to
Did
rotate, or you want
did you already do one, Mike?
No.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No.
Yeah, let's just rotate.
Well,
So
I've got sort of a theme going on with a lot of the reading that I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to start with the thing, one or two things that is not in that theme, and that is The Cull by Kelly Thompson. Now, this is an Image book. It's 5 issues long. The artist is Mattia de Iulis. Basically a group of 16 shooting an indie movie. They go to the beach early in the morning because they wanted the light that's just right at dawn, and they find a portal to a strange, like an alien world. And it's, when they return, they find out while they were gone, there was like a time dilation going on, and a lot more time passed back on Earth than what did for them, which was only like an hour. And they come back, and the aliens had invaded their Earth, and their families are missing, and I got to tell you, this, first of all, the art grabbed me immediately. It's I think painted, if not it's painterly, and so realistic and I guess I should say photorealistic, that it just draws you right into the atmosphere, and both atmosphere of the physical goings on and the emotional atmosphere of the characters, because they all got their own little drama that's going on. But I don't often I read a lot of these little Image or Boom or Dark Horse or whatever, miniseries, and then I just get rid of the book, like Shad just talked about with Yoda. But this is one I'm going to keep just because I loved it so much.
all right, well, I'll throw out. I started reading. I haven't finished this story arc yet, but so far it has been really, really good. So it's from Action Comics. I wrote down 858 to 860. That may actually be 658 to 660. I'll have to double check. But this is a Jeff Johns, Gary Frake Legion of Superheroes story. And the reason why I'm reading this is because I was told that the Substitute Legion is going to make an appearance in this at some point. But so far it's been really, really good. So if you are looking to dive into a Legion of Superheroes story, and you don't necessarily know a whole lot about the Legion, then one, you got Jeff Johns kind of at his peak. Gary Frank artwork is almost never a miss, and it's been so far a very good Superman / Legion story. I'm looking forward to getting back to that. Been reading some other stuff for some future podcasts, so I hadn't got a chance to get back around to finish that one yet. But it is definitely I'm gonna give it a thumbs up as a recommendation for something to read.
Yeah, I haven't read that era very thoroughly. I don't think that Jeff Johns had on Action. I don't know if that was in the mid 2000s or when exactly it was. Maybe it was in the teens even. I don't know, but it is an era I'd like to go back. I didn't pick up the books off the shelf or order them, new. If I go back, it'd have to be through the app, I'm sure.
And it is 858 to 860 are the issues that I've read. I'm getting ready to start part 4, so I think it's a 6-parter. So
Okay.
Shad.
It sounds familiar, but
Yeah.
okay.
One of the other ones, as we mentioned, books that I will always read is the Sandman Universe Nightmare Country, which is one of the most recent series that is wrapped up. It was a six issue series written by James Tynion, and it is it's an ongoing kind of thing. This is the second storyline, and like what seems like it's going to be a 3-act kind of situation. But essentially, we've got the Corinthian is been out walking among the people for a while now, as a nightmare that has decided to be not quite human, but to kind of live among the world. And he is kind of following this trail of these nightmares that are being reported that are not part of the dreamland, and turns out that it is potentially something that Desire, Dream's brother sister, Desire, that they are kind of, it's coming from their land. So I'm assuming that this, whatever the third kind of storyline, will wrap it all up, but it definitely seems as though, throughout the Sandman storyline, Desire is constantly trying to dismantle Dream, and ends up at the end of it, obviously, making it essentially to where Dream, as we know him, Morpheus, dies. So spoilers. And so this is just another one of Dream's greatest foes, is messing with the world of it all, and it was a pretty good series. I've been enjoying. We don't get a lot of books out of the Sandman universe these days. We just kind of have one, if we're lucky, a month kind of a thing, which is a great pacing for me, because I don't need to be overwhelmed with it. So this series was definitely something I enjoyed.
Speaking of Sandman, is that Netflix series coming back anytime? Have we heard any more about that?
Yeah, I think they're in production on it currently. I feel like I've seen maybe something about that. It was wishy-washy for a bit.
Yeah.
Did the Dead Boy Detective show is what's coming next on Netflix, that was going to be on
look forward to
HBO
that.
Max.
Yeah.
And I think Netflix bought the rights when Max decided they didn't want to put it out, and which it seems really weird. They've aged up the boys to where they're, I think, in like their later teens, at like 17, instead
But they're
of being
still
like
dead.
they're still dead. Don't worry about that part. They're more like dead, almost dead men detectives at this point. But it seems very CWE, but I think it'll be all right.
Or do you think they're going to use the same 2 actors they used in Patrol? Do you know?
I don't know. I can't remember if they're the same ones or not, because they've already had a trailer out and everything. But I don't recall if it's the same ones or not.
Mike?
Okay, so I'm going to just take turns on my themed reading. So you guys have heard that I like Treasury editions. I know that Scott's pulled some before that he's got his hands on for me. And I listened to a podcast by Rob Kelly called Treasury Cast, and he had a subject on one of them that I hadn't heard of. It was basically treasuries that were planned but never made it to print, at least not in a treasury. Some never made it to print at all. Some did, but in a different format. So I made it my ambition to read every one that I could get my hands on. The ones that I couldn't or never made it to print there was a King Arthur treasury that was promoted in house ads back in the 70s and never made it out. There was a Wizard of Oz treasury by Marvel that didn't make it out, but that's because they advertised for it, but then they found out they didn't have the rights anymore. And there's Portraits of Villainy by Alex Ross, which I really would have loved to see that. You can find some images online where basically it was just each page was just an Alex Ross image of all of the DC villains, and involved, well, there had to be some writing involved, I guess, because they had Paul Dini as his partner on this project. But the first one that I'll say that I read, you're going to laugh at, just because oh no, you're not, because I couldn't find it either. That was the Rudolph, meant to be a treasury. It had to be in a DC Blue Ribbon Digest. And the Jack Kirby Hunger Dogs, I never have had that, and I really don't feel like going out and looking for it. It's not on the DC app, but I'd heard that it was sort of like wrapped up the Fourth World saga that he wrote in the 70s with the New Gods and all of those ancillary books. But the one I did reread was the JLA Avengers. I'm sorry. The JLA Avengers in 1983 didn't come out either. It was just came out in a different format in the 2000s. So I did do some research, reading some articles about the whole kerfuffle about, why it never became published. There was, Marvel didn't like the script that Conway wrote. And then whenever Marvel provided an idea that maybe Roy Thomas do it or Mark Grunwald or something like that, they just never seen eye to eye. So I'm going to stop there. I basically talked about a lot of books I didn't read, but I took a lot of airtime to do that. So let's go to another turn.
Hunger Dogs came out when Marvel started doing the Marvel graphic novels, the magazine size stuff.
Yeah.
DC, I assume Marvel was first and DC was second, but I may be wrong there. DC released Hunger Dogs in that magazine size, not in a treasury size.
Right. That's what I was getting at. It was released in a different format than what it was originally intended for.
Okay.
It's
also been reprinted in some of those New Gods Kirby Fourth World volumes as well. So I've read it.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if the entire one, but it was when they came out with was it in the 90s when they came out with that?
I don't remember. I read it much later. Much later after it came out. Because I didn't even discover the New Gods till much later. So
yeah.
All right. I'll go with Captain America next. This is what I'm reading every month. I wrapped up the Captain America story arc that dealt with the Outer Circle. The idea that Captain America's shield was a symbol that wasn't for him. It was for something else. It was okay. It's one of those when you're reading a title, it's not so bad that it makes you want to not read it, but it's not so good that you're super jacked to read the next issue. However, I did read just this morning the first issue of the new Captain America, written by J. Michael Straczynski. And the first issue, while it's not blowing me away, I can tell that it's going to be very character driven. So it's going to focus in on Captain America, his ideals, what made him into the man that he is. So I'm 100% on board with this J. Michael Straczynski Captain America. I am looking forward to see how this moves forward. Chad. And real quick, how many in your theme did you have planned to talk about, Mike?
5.
Okay, all right.
But I can condense them into just,
Yeah, because we're already going kind of long, and we still have trivia and CLZ Shake to do. So I'm thinking maybe a couple of more apiece.
Okay.
And then we could either save this for later on and talk about it later on. Just as we've already got our notes, we can incorporate this into our next episode.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right.
I got the Gargoyles series. I actually caught up on reading. I've been buying them, and I read the first few, but then hadn't really been. So I caught up on all 10 issues that were out as of kind of when I was catching up on it all. It's been really good. It is very much if you liked the TV show, it's a continuation of it. The main writer on the TV show is the writer on the book. So it has the same feel. It really is. My only critique really is that it is really spread out. The story is real. They're really pulling that taffy. They're not. They're really making those issues kind of go. So I think this main series ends on issue 12. Is where they're going with this. It's really a cool story about the gargoyles being kind of recognized and looking for their own rights within New York City, and how do you treat a gargoyle when they commit a crime? How do you recognize that these beings exist and actually they're not hiding in the shadows anymore, and we have to kind of come face to face with all that. So pretty cool storyline, I thought. In kind of tied that into, they also have the Gargoyles Dark Ages series, which only has 3 issues out at this time. which is a prequel to the where we pick up, in the old Scottish times when they get turned to stone for 1,000 years. Kind of all the events leading up to that is what that series covers. It's been good so far. And their Halloween special that they put out in October was cute and it was a one shot. So it was a nice little story.
Mike.
Okay, so Action Comics 500 was originally intended to be a treasury. I didn't know that till I listened to this podcast. 1979 was when that iconic issue came out. It's sort of got one of those infinity covers. It's a big gatefold. It opens up, and you have the image of Superman and Lois Lane and Supergirl standing there holding a copy of the same comic that they're on the cover of, and it just goes on and on and on into infinity. It was written by Martin Pascoe and drawn by Kurt Swan. It was pretty much what you expect from that era and those creators. It wasn't anything that'll knock you out. It was kind of a neat callback to the late Bronze Age. Basically, Superman's recounting his whole life story, and while he was doing it, what he didn't know was the Lex Luthor was secretly pulling out his memories while he's telling these stories and putting them into a Superman clone to do his own bidding. So, kind of like I said, it was fun, just like what you just like going back and read something you liked when you were 12. So,
I'm gonna throw out the Fellspire Chronicles. This was that 12-issue series, which I think was actually titled The Last God.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and it's basically a sword and sorcery type title. I did manage to get through all 12 issues. I thought it was a slog, and I guess I don't know why I finished it. I guess because I started it and it was only 12 issues. I thought, well, I'll start it. I'll go ahead and finish it. I think it is one of those books that only hardcore sword and sorcery fans need to consider even reading.
Okay.
There is also, in addition to the comic pages, there is what I'll call back matter pages, where you have a lot of prose that gives you a lot more history on the characters and the universe. And the comic didn't interest me enough for me to take the time to read that prose. So it wasn't like I was dying to learn more about these characters or learn more about this world. But I suspect that, again, if somebody's, serious about Elric or Conan the Barbarian or, any of those style characters, they probably would really like this Fellspire Chronicle. There's a lot of material there inside of just 12 issues because of the prose that does all of the extra world building, which I can't comment to either way. So it wasn't for me, but I'm sure that there is somebody out there who could really enjoy that story. Chad.
My next one, I'll bundle a couple of books together. The Disney Villains series there, I read the Scar and Maleficent ones, and both of them were cool. I mean, the Scar one was 4 issues, the Maleficent one was 5, and they were just these really kind of neat, almost deleted scenes out of classic Disney movies is kind of what it felt like. It was, the Scar one was kind of the timeline between Simba being born and Simba taking over, and kind of where Scar kind of got his anger from and why he was so frustrated with the whole process. So that was kind of just a cool, like I said, deleted scene out of it. And Maleficent was a post Sleeping Beauty story on her side of things. So like I said, they were both really neat. Glad I read them. I'll keep them in the collection probably because I like the Disney books.
Yep. My last one will be Marvel Superheroes Contest of Champions. This was a 3-issue miniseries that was originally intended to be in a Treasury edition, and we know that because in Marvel Treasury Edition number 25, which featured Spider-Man and Hulk at the Winter Olympics, there was a big house ad saying that there was going to be Marvel Summer Olympics Treasury coming out. And basically, when it was decided that treasuries weren't that profitable or just weren't worth doing, they turned the plot, had it reworked by Mark Grunwald. John Romita Jr. did the art, which was really good art, by the way. And they created it. It was basically a,
miniseries.
well, what I mean is like it was one of these content tournament type deal, like a deathmatch type deal where these basically the Grandmaster is challenges a hooded figure. At the time, we didn't know who she was, just called unknown, but it turned out to be Death. Basically challenges her to a game, some game for the life of his brother, the Collector, who had died recently, I guess. I think he was killed by Thanos, I read. Anyway, they each recruit their respective characters or heroes to battle one another, and Grandmaster's team had characters we knew. A lot of them we knew, a lot of them were new at the time. You had Captain America, Captain Britain, Wolverine. Defensor was new. You had Sasquatch, etc. And then Death's team had Iron Man, Vanguard, Iron Fist, Shamrock, Storm. Again, a mixture of new and old characters. Anyway, Grandmaster's team wins, but Death then pulls the old double cross and says, well, you can win, but the only way you can bring back your brother is if you take his place in the realm of the dead, which he did. So it was okay. It was kind of cool to see all the characters. It was typical mid or early 80s type comics, but I had it. I wanted to read it anyway, and I was glad to hear that, okay, now I've got a good reason to read
it. Well, I'm going to slam a couple of quick ones into here, a couple of indie things. The first one is The Approach 1 and 2 from Jeremy Hahn. Horror comic. The idea is this plane that disappeared off a radar shows up many years later at this airport that is completely snowed in. Some monster or monsters gets released inside of the airport, so the people who are there trapped inside are dealing with this monster attack. That sounds like something you would like, then I recommend it. If you're not into the Thing or Alien type of a story, then again, it's probably not for you. And the other one is I did finish the second and third volume of We Only Find Them When They're Dead. We read that long time ago.
Yeah.
The Al Ewing stuff, and it jumps around timeline wise so much. It is actually very difficult kind of to follow. But I didn't care for how it finished. So it's not something that I would seriously recommend. But if you really liked the art, then it is definitely something to. It's still pretty to look at, even if you don't necessarily like the story. So
You might say it was stylized.
I'm not going to go. No, the art wasn't stylized.
Oh, it's not? Oh.
No, it's not stylized. So, and I've got a pretty good list here and this is just the things that I could remember because none of the apps have really, really good reading history to go back and
they do not.
Yeah,
right.
So if you're not like keeping tabs as you are going through and reading, but man, there's a ton of stuff. So if we want to do this again in a couple episodes, I've still got plenty of stuff and I'll try to remember to keep a running tab here and maybe we can spend a little bit more time on it. Next time. I know we probably all have lots of stuff. Is there anything you really want to mention, Shad, that you've been reading?
No, I'm all good.
I really want to mention.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. The trying to track what you've been reading. I need to in CLZ when I mark them as read because I'll do that. I kind of keep track of there. I need to mark that read date. That way I can actually filter by the date it's read. Otherwise, I'm just looking at a giant database of read comics and I have no clue when I actually read it.
All right. Mike, anything you really, really were just dying to talk about today that you haven't already talked about?
No, I mean, I just want to say that I'm actually reading some prose books right now. My daughter and I decided we want to get into our own little book club, so we take turns picking a book. We just read a book called The Midnight Library. It's sort of a fantasy book, and yeah, I thought that's kind of excited to do that. So now I got my other daughters wanting to join in too. So
hey, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here is our second installment of trivia. All right. So we have 8 questions. All right. I'm going to go ahead and tell you I was 7 for 8, and I am embarrassed by the one that I missed.
All right.
Okay. So yeah, because after I thought about it, it's like, oh, you big dummy. Yeah. So anyway. So I think you'll get most of these, if not all of them. So I don't think these are actually too too terribly tough between the two of you. So, all right. So, again, this is from the comic book trivia comic that came out just a few months ago from Blood Moon Comics. So, the first question is, which heroes, and it'll take Mike 3 seconds to get this one. So, Shad, you're on the you can relax on this first
I can
one.
sit back on this one.
Yeah,
All right,
you
cool.
can sit back on this first one. Which hero's real name is Carter Hall?
Oh, I know this one.
Well,
Then-
if it's
then go ahead.
You do?
Maybe.
Let's go
I don't
ahead,
know.
Shadster.
Is this a
You
trick
can, you can
question?
you can do a final answer. You can say our final answer is. So you can
I think
discuss it.
I think it's Hawkman.
You would be correct.
That is
Okay.
correct. All right. So question number 2. This is a multiple.
But let's
choice question.
elaborate a bit.
Okay.
You have Carter Hall was the name that Hawkman, whether it be Earth 1 or Earth 2, that he adopted, the alter ego he adopted. Their real names, if it was Earth 2, the Golden Age Hawkman, he had Prince Khufu.
Yes,
He was originally, and then he was reincarnated, etc. And then the Earth 1 Hawkman was Katar Hall, very similar phonetically to Carter Hall. Yep.
All right. Question number 2, multiple choice. Which of the following was a member of the original Sinister Six? A, the Lizard, B, Kraven, C, Green Goblin, D, Rhino.
Only one of them was an original member of the Sinister
Only
Six?
one of them was not an original member.
Oh,
of the
not an
Sinister-
original.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which of the following was a member of the original? So 3 of these are not original members
Okay.
of Sinister Six. Only one
Oh.
of them is an original member of the Sinister
Shoot.
Six.
Let's think this through, Shad. It's probably not one of the big names like Green Goblin.
Yeah, I'm
So
thinking
I've-
it was either Craven or Lizard would be my 2 guesses.
And Kraven doesn't seem to be a team player. I'd be more inclined to pick the Lizard. Because I don't know. This is going to be more
Yeah, I
of
don't
a
either. Yeah.
logic process of elimination.
Yeah, I
And who was
agree.
the other
Yeah,
one?
So A, Lizard, B, Kraven, C, Green Goblin, D, Rhino.
Or Rhino, yeah.
Rhino's another kind of B-list one,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
but
Mm.
I can't even picture an image of the Sinister Six. My guess is a Lizard.
Okay. I'll go with you. We'll go Lizard together.
All right. The correct answer is B, Kraven. This is also the one that I missed, and I feel dumb because I picked Rhino, and Rhino doesn't. Then after I picked it, it's like, wait, Rhino doesn't show up until like issue 40 something of Amazing Spider-Man, 41, I think, of Amazing Spider-Man. He was way after the Sinister Six's first appearance, so I felt like a big dummy on that one. So, but the correct answer is Kraven. All right, so 1 for 2. All right, number 3. What species is Medusa from Marvel Comics?
She must be. Do we get to talk about this?
Yeah, you can talk about them. Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think she's an Inhuman or an Eternal?
She's an Inhuman, yeah. She definitely is an Inhuman. I was like, she's a Gorgon, right? Is that?
Oh, well, that would be like that's what that monster was called in Greek mythology.
Yes, yeah, but she was an Inhuman. I know that for certain.
Well, that would be the species, I guess, right?
Is that a species?
That would be considered a species, yes.
Okay. I think Inhuman then.
All right, Inhumans is correct. So 2 for 3. All right. Who was the second Ghost Rider in Marvel continuity who first appeared in the 1990s?
90s, okay.
Well, we know it wasn't. Johnny Blaze was the first.
That is correct. Johnny Blaze was the first.
Nick Nolte was the second. No.
Of course, you could say Johnny Blaze was the second.
Oh.
Because there was the Western Ghost Rider.
Oh.
But they're talking about the bike riding skull.
Yeah.
Flaming Skull Ghost Rider here.
I know the name if I hear it, but I can't remember it.
I want to say Robbie something. Robbie
Yes.
Reyes.
Is that?
That's the only other one I know, if that's even
Is
right.
that your final answer?
I feel like that's
Has
the
to
best
be.
answer we got.
All right, so that is incorrect. Robbie Reyes was the third Ghost Rider. Danny Ketch
Danny
was
Ketch.
the
yes,
second
yes, yes.
Ghost Rider. All right. Well, here's a slow pitch for you, Mike. Who was the Golden Age Flash?
Well, that would be Jay Garrick.
That is correct. All right. Number 6. Which Ninja Turtle uses a bow staff?
Oh,
I know
shoot.
that.
Go.
Donatello.
That is correct. All right. Hank Hall and Don Granger, here's another soft pitch for you, make up which hero team?
Do I have to do it in order, or can I do it alphabetically?
In any way.
The Hawk and the Dove.
All right.
Oh,
and
okay.
number 8. All right. Who is Julia Carpenter? I'm going to give you a hint on this one.
Karen Carpenter's long lost sister.
We talked about this earlier in the podcast.
Oh. Julia Carpenter.
Mm-hmm. We talked about this earlier in the podcast.
She must have been a Fantastic Four character or supporting character. She was maybe a girlfriend to
She Madam
Johnny
Webb?
Blaze, maybe? Johnny's girlfriend, maybe?
I got nothing.
That's just a guess, but that's my final answer. Johnny's girlfriend.
So Shad was on the right track. She was Spider-Woman.
Oh, okay.
She was the Spider-Woman. I think that's actually the name of the character that Dakota Johnson's going to be playing in Madam Web.
Is going to be Karen Carpenter?
Julie Carpenter.
Julie.
Julie Carpenter. So yeah. So yeah. So
Okay.
what? 6 for 8. So I beat you by 1 that time.
Yeah.
I was 7 for 8. So now we talked about this. Next time, because I'm putting you guys on the spot. So next time, since you have this book, Mike, do you want to put me on the spot so you two get together?
Sure.
And come up with what your score was, and you put me
Well,
on
I'll just
the
let
spot
you guys
next
team
time?
up. I've got the book
we'll
and let
team
you
up.
guys.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard for
okay.
he and I
All right.
to team.
I will always be the unknown.
Okay, all right. So,
but I need to know how far to go in it because I don't want to accidentally read something.
Well, I'm going sequentially. So that's what I read was the actual first page of trivia questions.
Okay.
All right. So then I can read you what the first question is on the page that you would be doing because the answers are all down at the bottom of the page.
Oh, okay. Then I'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just find the page. So it's actually the second page of trivia. So you will handle that one.
I'll be the Alex Trebek in the next episode.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sounds like a plan. So all right. So CLZ shake.
All right.
I'm stuck on my app. It is not letting me get to my list. So why don't you guys go first?
All right, I'll do it. Oh, we have Marvel Knights X-Men number 4. This is the series that came out in 2014. I don't remember this completely, but I really remember liking the art a lot from Bram Ravel, who wrote and drew on this. I love a good somebody who does all of it. I love the double duty teams, the team of one with that. But yeah, I couldn't tell you specifically what I really enjoyed about this, except for that I enjoyed the art and the story wasn't horrible from what I remember on it.
Mike, you want to go? Yeah.
Sure. I was on a Superman kick there, so what I have is Superman Volume 1, number 172 from way back in 1964. And again,
I'm sure you had that memorized.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. But it was one of those, a lot of these covers were very similar back then. They were almost always Kurt Swan art. And this is a blonde-headed Superman that's basically Clark Kent. The real Superman lost his powers, and the new one is named Arval. I'm not sure where he came from. Maybe Kandor. Oh yeah, Kandor. It says here. You know what it is? They have a lot of exposition on the cover and the word balloons. Tell you everything you need to know. But I can't say I've ever read it. I'm sure I just picked it up. It was part. It looks like. Oh yeah, it's just a all-in-one story. One 3-part story and 32 pages long. I don't know who wrote it though. It doesn't really say here. But yeah, that's it.
Okay, trying to get that where it's somewhat visible. Oh, once again, we have Power Pack. Power Pack, issue 43. Okay, and once again, I have not actually probably read this one. but I just have it in my collection because as I have been, going through dollar boxes, when I see Power Pack, I pick it up, and I have a complete run of Power Pack. So this is towards the end of the Power Pack run. I think we're about a year, maybe 13 months. I think 56 was the last last issue of Power Pack. So they had this big bad that they were fighting, which was the Bogeyman. So, obviously playing off the Boogeyman from the dreams and nightmares of children. So this also was taking place during the X-Men Inferno storyline. So John Bogdanov was still the artist and writer on this one. So you had somebody doing double duty. Louise Simonson was not the writer any longer. And again, this was towards the end of that run. So not super exciting CLZ shake for me, but it is what it is. Chad, what we got coming next?
Next, we have the pre-order catalogs. So we'll be going through the next phase, whatever previews is going on, Marvel catalog, all that good stuff.
Full box, et cetera, et cetera. And Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to you besides at podcast@birdcomics.com, where would they do that at?
It could be on Mike Atchison5 on X, formerly known as Twitter, or it could be m.atchison90@gmail.com.
All right. And Shad, what about you?
You can find me on Facebook, usually at Shad Schubert. That's SHAADSCHUBERT.
And I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at burgcomics.com, BURG Comics. And it has links to my Facebook, eBay store, all the social media pages. And we will be back soon with next phase.
Yeah, so it's a very short mention. Somebody asked him on Twitter's X. Is there any truth to the rumors that Tom King is working with you on developing a Supergirl film? And if so, are there any other of his acclaimed book runs you're considering collaborating with him to bring to the DCU? Which means I'm going to like them all, but have one really, really big pet peeve. Every single one of them. Yeah. One gripe. One major gripe. Lord of the Rings. Is it one ring to rule them all or one gripe to ruin it all? That's right.